So you decided to finish high school. You wanted to have that completed before you went full on onto the world tour,
which is a good fallback plan.
which is quite admirable.
Be cool, stay in school.
And you mentioned Pam Burridge, who was from your area, who was one of the standouts during those years. Who else was instrumental in not only mentoring, but someone that you looked up to as you kind of blossomed into a pro career?
Okay, so when you set a goal, no matter how audacious or how big or how stretched it is, that sense of clarity is what enables you to start asking the right questions. If you're not really clear on what it is that you want, then you tend to go through life a bit rudderless. You know, you allow life experiences and circumstances to blow you off course from time to time because you don't really know what course it is that you want to take in the first place. I set the stake in the sand as an 8-year-old to become a world champion. I set the stake in the sand as a 15-year-old to become a world champion surfer. And then I started finding world champions to surround myself with, because when you surround yourself with experts, you save yourself a lot of time. Because I've learned that true leaders, they actually learn from other people's mistakes. We're fools, they just choose to learn from their own. And I decided that if I surround myself with world champions from all different sports, but people who have been there and experienced what I want to achieve, and I can just absorb as much knowledge as I can from them, then I'll learn a lot faster. And so I started traveling and surfing and training with Pam Burridge. I had her husband shape me my surfboards. I started training and surfing and traveling with Tom Carroll, who was a past world champion. Barton Lynch, who was a world champion. Tom Carroll and Barton Lynch I used to train with as well all the time. Martin Potter, Wendy Botha. I basically just surrounded myself with world champions. Guy Leach, who was a world Ironman champion. Just the northern beaches is full of world champions. We're underdogs that love to achieve over there. I don't know, it must be in the water in Manly. But when I surrounded myself with world champions, it really propelled me towards success. It wasn't easy though. It did take me 8 years to get there. So it was a long journey and it was a slog, and I certainly made it a lot more difficult than it needed to be. But what I did do was I identified what my flaws and weaknesses were. And I was number 2 in the world in the mid-90s. I'd been on tour for about 4 or 5 years. I was just so close to winning my first world title, but I was never quite getting there. And the thing is that when we have these massive or lofty expectations and life keeps delivering down here, everything in the middle is just nothing but pain and struggle and suffering. And that's where I was. And then if you have success in that area, then you tend to believe that that is the only way to succeed. And so I realized that this wasn't any fun anymore. And so I looked at what my competitors were doing, who were world champions, and I asked them, what are you doing differently? And they said, well, I've started working with this personal trainer, or I've started working with this surf coach. I'm like, great, introduce me. Because my 2 biggest weaknesses were my technique and my fitness. So when I started training with my personal trainer, he not only changed me physically, but mentally. I did some of the most ridiculous forms of training that today would just seem out of context for surfing. Running Palm Beach sand dunes, doing 40 hills, 1,000 push-ups and 1,000 sit-ups in one training session doesn't make you a better surfer, I can guarantee you that. But it does make you incredibly mentally tough. But it was my surf coach that when I finally started working with one, he had just trained a couple of other world champions. And I went up to him and I said, listen, I've been told I surf like a crab. And he said, what does a crab surf like? And I said, why don't I just show you? So I went out and I caught one wave, and I came in and he goes, you're right, you do surf like a crab. And he said, there's good news and bad news. The good news is we're going to work together. The bad news is everything you know, you need to let it go and start again. And I was number 2 in the world at the time. And you have to have the trust in the people that you're working with that they're going to bring the best out in you. But if your foundations in which you're working towards or working from are flawed, then you're never going to get there. So I realized that very quickly.
And, you know, everyone that looks at surfing a lot of times as such an individual sport or an individual effort. You just illustrated that it's a team effort, and it takes a lot of discipline and humility from a surfer to seek that knowledge and seek that improvement. Now, you finally got there.
Yes.
After 8 years.
After 16 years of declaring the world, I'm going to be a world champion.
8 from 16, then 8 more. And so you got over the hump, you got the championship. Describe that feeling for us.
Well, it was absolute euphoria and relief. And I believe that my competitors were as relieved as I was, because they're like, okay, now she can shut up already and stop claiming to the world she's going to be the best in the world. Because when I started training and surfing with Pam Burridge, I would already declare to her that I was going to be a multiple-time world champion. And she's like, shut up, Gidget, you haven't even won an event yet. I'm like, well, that's not encouraging, Pam. I'm not listening to you anymore. And so I'm going to surround myself with people who are supportive. But Pam's always been very supportive and encouraging. She just wanted to keep me down a little. But the thing was is that when you put that stake in the sand and you go after it, having achieved it after such a long period of time, I didn't know how it was meant to feel. It was just an expectation that I had that when I did achieve it, I'm like, oh, thank God I've done that. It was an immense amount of relief and satisfaction. But then it was a matter of wiping the slate clean and then starting the year again. Because I won the event, I won the world title halfway through the year. I won my world title the earliest in the year that anyone's ever won a world championship. And because I was so dominant from the start of the year. And then I had to reset my goals to maintain my motivation. Otherwise, I'm like, well, the year's done. I can take the year off now. But then my objective after I achieved that was to come to Hawaii, win the Triple Crown, win a few more events, win more prize money. I don't know, I just kept setting all these different goals to keep myself motivated. But achieving world championship status, the great thing about being a world champion is that title's never, ever taken away from you. You just become a former world champion, which is what I've become.